and thank you for watching the Watchlist. I'm Isaac Kamau, an investment associate at Nabo Capital, and this is my colleague.
I'm Rolly Kipkemoi, and we are glad that you've been able to find time to join us today. Yes, so I think we'll start off with China.
Yes.
Again on Friday, and it's all about tariffs again. They announced an additional 10% above existing rates on $75 billion worth of US exports to China, and these across over 5,000 plus products that move from the US to China. And in retaliation, Trump, of course, through his favorite medium of information, of dispatching information, Twitter, announced that starting October 1st, goods worth 250 billion these are exports from China to the US that were currently being taxed at 25% will now be taxed at an additional 5%, so bringing it to a total of 30%, while the remaining $300 billion worth of Chinese exports to the US as well, which were meant to be taxed from September 1st at 10%, will now be charged at 15%. And you would, of course, expect markets to be rattled by this news.
And they were.
Certainly across developed markets, across emerging markets, even frontier markets. And we have a number of examples here. Kenya going from Friday till, I think it was the price as of today, or maybe the closing price today, down about 1.4%. We see a lot, all major economies in Africa having performed negatively between Friday and today, and it's within the 0.5% to, or maybe about 0.37 to slightly above 1%. We see most of them ranging within that bound. For example, I can just example Nigeria at 0.37% and South Africa at about 0.7% or 1% down over that same period of time, while some emerging market economies also, have been hit.
Yes.
It's a bit more significant. A country like Brazil is now down about 3%, and Pakistan about 4%. Vietnam is almost within the range where the African countries are.
I think the trade tensions really cause a lot of uncertainty in investors' minds, and that leads to them sort of taking a step back from more risky assets and asset classes, and focusing more on more safer assets.
Yeah, you can say.
So we've seen a lot of stock markets. In fact, most stock markets take a hit whenever there's sort of an escalation in trade tensions, and fixed income tends to be somewhat counter-cyclical to that. Like if you look at the last couple of days, a lot of sort of hard currency, high-grade fixed income assets have actually rallied as funds have sort of moved from more risky asset classes and asset classes which are more sort of correlated with the business cycle and the economic environment into stuff that's more stable in the long run. And I think the more we see uncertainty, the more we might begin to see this continue. And I think this past week Trump has somewhat softened his tone at the G7 meetings, but still, that unpredictability of policy is something that causes quite a few headaches.
It is announced faster. That is first announced on Twitter.
yes, first announced on Twitter, straight from the president's mind. And later
the press.
I think that really is the core of what's driving the short-term moves in assets.
I think we can go to the next story.
Yes. The next story is from Egypt, where the central bank cut its policy rates 150 basis points. So the key lending rate is 14.25, which was cut 150 basis points. The central bank is really basing this on the outlook when it comes to inflation, as well as its desire to support economic growth. So that's really the rationale behind this cut. It was more or less predicted broadly by most market participants. I think the only question was the amount, the magnitude of the cut. That's where there was a bit of uncertainty, but the path of rates is, I think, very clearly
downward.
Going forward. Now, this has already affected markets, as I'm sure you've seen. The local EGP treasury markets, for example, the 91-day treasury bill auction for last week, the yield came in at 16.4. The previous week was 17.9. So it's already beginning to translate into the into markets.
And of course, again, other than the treasuries, also the 5-year and the 10-year recording dips of about 140 basis points and 87 basis points respectively, as a subsequent subsequent to that. And something to note is these are the lowest yields that has been experienced over the past 3 years.
Yes, I think it's really part of that recovery story that's been playing out. And this trend downwards in terms of rates, I think, really supports a lot of businesses within that economy, such that now they're able to borrow at more favorable rates to actually invest for the future. And I think that definitely is a positive for them.
I think we can move to the last two stories. We start with Nigeria, and we saw now the Nigerian Stock Exchange delisting one bank and one microfinance institution. So we find Skybank and Fortis Microfinance Bank being delisted from the exchange. However, we are aware that Skybank was of course had already been its license had been revoked by the Central Bank of Nigeria back in October 2018, and it's mainly because of liquidity levels and the capital adequacy levels, capital adequacy ratios, which weren't meeting the Central Bank threshold. So I think it was about time that happens. It's a bit tough for the market, for the banks, but let's wait and see how the market turns out.
I think we can change gears a bit. I think the final major event of the past week is the leading candidate in the presidential election in Tunisia has actually been arrested.
Wow, the Africa we are in.
But there's been talks for some time over the last couple of months of potential accusations of money laundering on his part. He of course has denied these charges, but he's now been formally taken in for questioning. I don't believe he's been charged with anything as yet, but there's a probability that might happen. I think one odd thing about this story is that the Electoral Commission is still insisting that he's a candidate in the election. Set to account 15th September. He, as at the latest poll towards the end of July, he was actually the leading candidate. So this throws further uncertainty towards the election, which it's a fairly crowded field. About 26 candidates. There's about 3 major ones. There's a fourth one who just announced in the past week, so we don't quite know exactly how he fits in, but it's likely to also enter that top 3. And I think it just throws more uncertainty into the political environment in that country over the next coming months. The trend overall has been more towards populist policies. Given the fact that they are supposed to be reforming the economy, it will be interesting to see how that plays out.
I think let's wait and see. Fantastic. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this afternoon. Please catch us in our next episode. Goodbye.